everybody. So they didn't see people again. I missed last year, and sorry, but I recognize faces from 2 years ago, and it's pretty cool to be back in the mix. And you guys are a hard group to come up with something for. You think it's easy, right? Because you know pearls, we love pearls, we all love pearls. But it's tough because we've got experts in here. We've got people that are in the trade that know a lot about pearls. You guys as consumers know far more than most people about pearls. We've got Jeremy that came with the technical stuff and the updates with Japan, which is great. Josh later is talking about some farming. Nia's going to talk about jewelry if you want to understand, which is going to be pretty exciting because cedar stuff up here is amazing. Okay, so something new for you. Has anybody ever seen this painting before? Raise your hand. Oh, great. Well, there goes that presentation. I'm messing with you. Okay, of course you've seen it. Girl with a Pearl Earring. It's one of the most recognized paintings in the world. CNN did a survey about it and put it up there. They didn't actually say it, but they said it was one of the most recognized paintings in the world. I think probably more recognized, especially for Gen Zers now, than the Mona Lisa. So we all know the painting, but what I want to talk about today is something about the painting that you may not know, and that is that that pearl isn't a pearl.
Really?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that, but before we go into the particulars, I want to talk a little bit about just kind of art in general. And there's a saying that you're going to hear me say a lot, and it is pearls are the most interesting, important, and influential gems the world has ever known. And it's true, right? And I love telling that to my diamond friends and my colored gem people because they're like, yeah, whatever, man, right? But it's easy to prove. And how do you prove it? Well, text. There's text going back to like 3000 BC about people wearing pearl jewelry. Who's heard of Pliny the Elder? Yeah, I bet a good 25-30% of us. 2,000 years ago, almost exactly, he wrote a book called Natural History. It was the first sort of encyclopedia of the time that talked about life up until that point. And this is another bit of proof in that he had mentioned pearls many times throughout that document, as he would talk about all the famous stories that you may have heard of. Cleopatra here, a quick recap of that story, if you haven't heard it, is that she made a bet with Mark Antony to host the most expensive banquet ever in the history of the world. And he said, okay, you're on. So they had this banquet, they had the pheasants, the dancing monkeys, all that stuff. And Mark Antony came up here and he said, okay, Cleo, great party, but it's not the most expensive one ever hosted in the world. And she said, wait a minute. She gets to her ear, grabs what was considered the most expensive pearl in the world at the time, cost her 11 million sesterces. Hard to determine what that is today, but it was the most expensive piece of jewelry in the world. Drops it in a cup of, they say, wine or vinegar, it dissolves, she drinks it, and she goes, there you go, most expensive banquet in the world. So Pliny talks about that. He talks about Caesar. Caesar used to have a game where he would hold, that's a party trick, he would hold a pearl in his hand and be able to guess how much weight it is, and then he'd wait to show people how cool he is, right? Pompey was one of his generals, conquered, basically turned Rome from a colony into an empire. When he conquered his, I think, fourth continent, or no, it was the third continent, they had what's called a triumphant, a parade. And he created a statue of himself made completely of pearls and put it on a 4-horse chariot and paraded around town for a few days. Pliny talks about that too, and he says that it was such a disgusting display of wealth, which it was, because pearls at the time were considered extremely expensive and a sign of power and a sign of wealth. So there's a lot of text about pearls. But what I really love is pearls in art because, I like seeing stuff. And here's a picture of one of many pictures of Cleopatra, for example. Pearls in art can teach us a lot about history. And we're going to get to the pearl earring in a minute, but I want to kind of give you this context. In history, pearls have always been put on famous people, people with political power like George Villiers who is on the court for King James, or this lady here who is just a famous, very wealthy person who sat for a portraiture, and the pearls are showing her wealth in this. It's been reserved for kings and queens, King Henry VIII in this case, and Mary I, who weren't actually sitting together, but it was put there. As a matter of fact, that pearl that she's wearing, a lot of people thought was the law of Peregrina. It isn't, and we're going to talk about that a little later. But pearls throughout art have been on kings and queens. Kings and queens have always loved pearls. So you've got famous people, wealthy people. You've got priests. Religiously, the pearl is mentioned in the Bible more than any other gemstone. you guys might even be aware of some parables. A lot of them are in the book of Matthew about pearls. All of them likening pearls to heaven itself. Now, where do you think the pearly gates of heaven came from? Right? That's a thing. So religiously, even priests and monks would wear pearls. They've got some sewn into their robes here. That guy's got some on his hat. I don't know what you call that hat. I have to look it up. And then pearls have been on people that don't exist. Who is this? Anybody recognize who that could be? Want to guess? It's Venus, the goddess of love. So Aphrodite was the Greek version of Venus. This is the Roman Venus. And Venus is always depicted with pearls. Why? Do you guys remember seeing that painting where Aphrodite's stepping out of that clamshell? It's in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. Aphrodite, Venus, they were born of the sea, and they're always depicted wearing pearls because of that. And as a matter of fact, the Romans and the Greeks used to believe that pearls were made when Venus would cry, tears of joy, not sadness, and they drop into the water into an oyster, and you create a pearl. They probably thought that because pearls were often drop-shaped. So there's all these pearls in art. It's amazing. I've been cataloging all the art, all the paintings of pearls in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris and at Houston Museum. And I discovered that there's like a fascinating thread between all of these, I guess you could say, string or silk string. But what anyways, a fascinating thread between pearls and art, and more so than anything, it's the thing that ties everything together, whether it's artist, art type, century, style, society. There's pearls everywhere, they always have been. So they are the most important, influential gems in the world. Did I convince you? You guys with me on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, one more thing, Adonis. Now this is Venus's man crush. He wears a pearl. He, by the way, is considered the most perfect man in the world. I'm just letting you know. So we got this man. Look at Weeze back there. Myself, anybody else wearing pearl wool, we got this. So don't let anybody tell you that men can't wear pearls because the most perfect man in the world wore wool. I can talk about pearls and art history all day long. I really love this subject, as you can tell. But let's get down to the girl with the pearl earring and talk about why that isn't a real pearl. Now, it wasn't originally called that. As a matter of fact, anybody want to guess when it was named girl with pearl earring? Do we happen to know this? Throw out a guess, a day or a year.
November 7th, 1885.
That is so close. Except for it was 1995. But I appreciate the answer. So this has gone by all sorts of names in the past. Here's some of them. Girl in a turban, girl in an exotic dress, and I hope some of you did not get paid for this one, ahead of the young girl. Imagine how long that meeting took. So it's been called a lot of names. It wasn't until just recently that it was actually called Girl in a Pearl Earring. Well, why? The artist didn't actually name it Girl in a Pearl Earring. He didn't name it anything, as a matter of fact. And it's a good point to bring up why he did it. And this is called, in Dutch art, a tronie. A tronie is a image of a character, but it's generic. So it's when artists would take, let's say, a scholar and create a picture of what a scholar should look like, or an old man, or a young woman, or a soldier. A tronie wasn't just a generic type, and it helped the artist kind of convey through expression of the face what that person would be like. And they were sold very cheaply out on the street markets and things like that. So we know that the girl with the pearl earring was a tronie. As a matter of fact, she may not even exist. There's a chance that there was a girl that sat with her, but if so, we wouldn't know. Now, and if he did use an actual person, what are the chances of her walking into that room with a pearl that's that big, that beautiful, that well-shaped, right? Or even of him borrowing a pearl like that. Those pearls, at the time, the 1600s, were reserved for, as we talk about in art, kings and queens. So Queen Elizabeth I. On the right there is King Charles I, who wore that pearl since he was 15 years old through battles and even to his own beheading. If there was a pearl of that quality, it would make its way to a king or queen someplace. What are the chances that a girl would have it walking into the studio? Pretty much none. As a matter of fact, that pearl even rivals La Peregrina. Now this is Liz Taylor. You guys may have heard of La Peregrina. It's considered to this day one of the nicest, largest natural teardrop pearls in the world. There's 3 pearls at the time that existed that were like that. It was La Peregrina, not to confuse you, La Pellegrina, and then another one that was called the Pearl of Mary of Tudor. They were all 50s to 70 carats and perfect and beautiful. If you take a look at the girl with the pearl earring, if that was a pearl, it would rival literally the best 3 pearls on the planet. Now, what if she borrowed it from the king or queen? And you, like me, going and borrowing the Hope Diamond for a photo shoot. So I really don't think that's going to happen. But you don't know until you ask, I guess. Maybe I should try. That just gave me a good idea. So in the 1600s, let's talk about some more evidence. There are some other paintings of pearls because, as we've already established, pearls throughout history have been covered everywhere in art and literature. So why don't we take a look at some other Dutch artists, same time period, same country, paintings with pearls. And you're going to notice a little bit of difference. I'm going to zoom in on some of them a little bit later, but these are all Dutch artists from the 1600s. On the right side, you zoom up and what you start to notice, it may be hard for you guys to see, is that what do these look like? They look like pearls. So they've got a soft glow to them with some luster on top of them. They're kind of voluptuous. They're what we expect to see in pearls, another painting. With his pearl, I think it looks kind of like a reflection of like a headlight. So it's a strong, crisp, hard reflection. With other pearls, especially in the same time period and throughout our history, you can see more of a soft, subtle tone, and these are what pearls tend to look like, what we're used to seeing. How often do you put the two together? It's really interesting when you do that and see. We've got some more cool pictures coming up too. He captures the lighting on that in a way that bounces off and reminds me more of like maybe a polished piece of metal or tin or maybe glass, but it doesn't remind me of what would look a pearl would look like. So let's look at some more close-ups of that. Hers versus another 1600s painting. Yet another one. Do you see the difference? So, if it's not a pearl, then what is it? Well, how about a polished piece of metal? Or on the right there, these are just polished glass beads. It's amazing how that looks kind of like one of these, isn't it? I don't know. But the other interesting thing it could be is maybe an imitation pearl. Now, did you know that imitation pearls were actually made in the 1600s? It goes back that long. Yeah. And part of the reason is because, as we discussed, pearls have been so popular for so long that everybody wanted them, but nobody could afford them. So maybe it's a glass bead. At the time, they were even making pearls with fish scales to mimic a real pearl with the grittiness, with the texture, and trying to capture that kind of glow and play of light. It makes me wonder if people knew that there were fish on their necks, because that's kind of interesting. I think Majorca does that now, right? Have you guys heard? That's the way they still do it. So maybe it was a faux pearl. Maybe it was maybe she brought it in to make it look like a real pearl. We don't know. Well, back to Vermeer for a second. So a few things about him, but I really want to just concentrate on one thing that will help me kind of prove this point. Here's some stats about him. But notice in yellow, I highlighted something. He was a master at lighting, and he was known for his meticulous detail. So whatever he did there was on purpose, and it was to play with the light, and he knew what he was doing in terms of detail. And let's take a look at some of the other pieces that he's painted. Look at the light coming in from the left, and look at the detail in these pieces, and they all tend to come in from the left. Here's a few more. So if he's a master at light, then he made a decision when he painted that pearl. And what he painted it with is one stroke of lead white paint, and that was it. We know this because in a minute I'm going to show you the x-rays of the painting, because there's no layering. So that was his decision, one stroke of lead paint. Let's get into the science of it. Okay, so X-ray analysis of this shows that unlike other paintings, his own paintings, other paintings of pearls, there was no buildup on this pearl. It was just literally that one piece of lead white paint. If you look at different x-rays of different parts of her, you're gonna see buildup of paint and texture and whatnot to give a full story of whatever he's talking about, with the exception of this particular pearl. So there's no layering that you'd expect to convey a pearl's glow, its luster. Let's talk to an astrophysicist about this guy. His name's Vincent Ick, and he studied this pearl, and this is what he said: it's too pear-shaped, too metallic, and too big to come from the sea. Okay, well, let's talk to the director of the museum at the Merithaus, where this is actually housed right now. And her name is Martine. I love what she says about it. It's neither pearl nor glass, it's simply paint. That's why she's director of the Merithaus Museum. I gotta meet that girl, she seems pretty fun. So, we got ourselves a painting here that isn't a pearl. Have I convinced you? Yeah, it's surprising. And now, can I tell Sarah a little story about my conversation with Sarah when I said I was going to talk about this? She said, Matt, but if you talk about that, it's kind of sad because you just ruined it for me. Because of that, I'm going to finish this on a high note. What if, let's flip the script a little bit. What if Vermeer actually meant it to be a pearl, but he was just kind of in his own way playing with the light and using that one little touch of paint? What if he wanted to elevate her? So he knew at the time full well that that pearl could only belong to, say, a queen. What if by doing that he took this girl that was just a commoner, a simple girl, an ordinary girl, and made her queen-like by putting this beautiful pearl on her? What if he turned a servant into a story that way? That could be the story of the painting. We talk about it being Trony, so Trony is kind of character, it's like acting, it's like a performance. What if this is just a way to kind of set and pull together that stage? He's got the girl, but imagine her for a minute without the earring, what she looked like. It wouldn't quite be there. Maybe the pearl or the earring, whatever it is, just kind of sets the stage as kind of like a prop movie and pulls it together. And this is my romantic version. What if he did mean it to be a pearl? He just never told any of his buddies what the name of it was, or write it down. And he meant girl with a pearl earring the whole time, knowing that pearls have symbolized purity, divinity. Every time you see Virgin Mary in her crowning in a painting, she's being placed with a crown made of pearls. What if he knew about the pearly gates of heaven? What if he also knew about Venus, Aphrodite, and all the other symbolism through the ages, because pearls have represented everything from wealth to purity to love, all this good stuff that we love. What if he was just wrapping all that up and putting it on her ear of an ordinary person, and then somehow through her expression showing that this girl embodies all of that? What if she was real and he saw this in this person? That would be pretty incredible right there. So, could it be? I don't know. Whatever he did, here's the interesting thing, is that 360 years later, we're talking about it. What if that was the masterpiece, right? If he planned for us to talk about this 360 years later, that to me is what's most incredible about this painting. And I'll leave you with this. Maybe you don't think about the painting like in the literal sense, girl with a pearl earring, but maybe the name is appropriate because she glows with this radiance against this black background, kind of like a pearl would. And so maybe it is appropriate. Let's see if it stays. That's what I got for you. All right, thanks everybody. If you have questions, I don't know if I can answer them, but I can try. And then thinking about art history, I don't know if you got a minute or two. Oh, and by the way, Sarah mentioned my YouTube. We break down all these stories about pearls and art on my YouTube, and there's an hour-long presentation that I do for Air Tahiti and all their airplanes about pearls and history. And we cover literally the entire history of pearls. We've broken it down into YouTube clips. So feel free to scan that, check out YouTube. You'll see a lot of other cool stuff. And I design pearl jewelry too. I didn't bring any, but my website link is on my link tree right there too. So I'd love for you guys to go check out and see what I've got, my own designs as well. Anybody want to talk about art and pearls or the girl in pearl earring? I just out of a raise of hands, I want to kind of see who now does not think that's a pearl earring. All right, kind of half raising one. There's like 3 or 4 for sure. There's a bunch of.
We do not believe.
Whenever I tell people that I work with pearls, there's 2 responses I always get. One of them is they're like, "Oh, you mean like you dive down and you get those things out of the water?" And I'm like, "Well, not quite, right?" But the other one, does this ever happen to you? Is they say, "Oh, well, have you seen the girl in the pearl earring? You know that painting?" It'd be like asking like a Michelin star chef if he's aware of France, you know? Yeah, of course I know the girl in the pearl earring, but I figured it might come up, so this might be an interesting topic of conversation that you can bring up with people. We just recapped this, and I posted on my YouTube a few days ago a 7-minute version of this, so feel free to spread that around if you want to spread the word too. All right, with no questions, I'll hand it back over to Sarah.
Okay,
There
thank
you
you
go.
very much.